Nobody ever deserves to be placed in a position where they have to decide whether they should take a loved one off life support. You're required to make one of the hardest decisions of your life when things start to deteriorate fast. Ryan Finley was put in this position where he had to decide whether to pull the plug on his wife's life support when things took a turn for the worst. His wife was in a coma and he had tried everything to make sure he was alive. She remained unresponsive after 2 weeks. Was he able to admit that it was over? Married for years. Jill and Ryan Finley had been married for 4 years and resided in Oklahoma. The couple were both 31 years old and had so many plans for the future. Ryan was a plumbing contractor and Jill worked as a loan underwriter. A normal weekend. The couple was enjoying a normal weekend. They liked spending this time with their close friends and family. It was Sunday and Ryan had woken up at 7 in the morning. He had the urge to check on his wife who was sleeping next to him. The plan. The couple had decided to spend their weekend enjoying quality time together. As usual, Ryan woke up before his wife. However, this morning was different. When waking up, he had the urge to check if his wife was doing okay. She couldn't wake up. Ryan couldn't explain why he felt the urge to check on his wife. He was met with shock when he saw that she wasn't waking up. She remained asleep even after he yelled for her or shook her. He decided to check if she was still alive. Not breathing. After watching his wife for some time, he concluded she wasn't breathing. This was a horrific revelation and he acted quickly to get her out of the situation. He called 911 immediately and performed CPR on his unresponsive wife. CPR training. Shaking his wife awake wasn't working. He also wasn't getting any response when he checked her pulse. After realizing this disturbing revelation, he recalled a CPR course he'd taken a few years back. He placed her on the floor and began chest compressions. The arrival of the EMTs. Despite his numerous attempts, he couldn't get his wife to start breathing again. He had no alternative other than to wait for the medical professionals. It took the paramedics approximately 15 minutes to arrive on the scene. One of the specialists used a defibrillator on his wife. Sheer panic. Awaiting effective medical help felt like an eternity. The moment was becoming tenser and tenser as he waited to hear his wife's fate. The ambulance sirens filled the air and Ryan's chest began to tighten with a sheer panic of not knowing what was about to happen. Their only hope. Jill's unresponsive and lifeless body lay on the floor while people observed the ambulance crew making efforts to save her. These efforts all failed, which meant that Jill had to go to the hospital. She was taken to Oklahoma Heart Center. Praying. The ambulance rushed through the streets to get to Oklahoma Heart Center. Ryan was still confused by everything that was going on. He kept asking the paramedics what was wrong with his wife, but he didn't get any answers. He was instead instructed to remain calm. At the hospital. Upon arriving at the hospital, Jill was rushed to the ICU ward. Doctors began work on figuring out what was happening with the woman and how they could help save her life. At this point, she had a pulse but didn't know anything else. Stabilizing her. Physicians had reported that Jill had suffered a heart attack while she was sleeping. For this reason, her body was stripped of oxygen for approximately 5 minutes. From this lack of oxygen, she was susceptible to developing neurological disorders, which was why she was placed in a hypothermic environment. Bringing down her body temperature. Jill's core body temperature had declined during her heart attack, which meant that the team needed to supplement it. The doctors' and nurses' hopes were for her to recover awareness to enable the team to support her. Jill was unconscious and they couldn't do anything about it. Minimizing the damage. Regulating Jill's body temperature was done in an attempt to minimize any damage to Jill's brain that's commonly the result of oxygen deprivation. This was a rapid action that aided in recovering Jill's essential brain activity. She was now breathing with the help of life support. Holding on to hope. During this entire period, Ryan never left his wife's side. He would nap and curl up in her hospital room. He wanted to be at the hospital when his wife decided to wake up. However, this dream started to wane as time went on. By her side, the truth began to set in when the doctors told Ryan about Jill's prognosis. Her odds of survival had dropped to 1% after 72 hours passed. His thoughts were running everywhere, but he knew he needed to determine his next move. Not looking good. The doctors began to lose faith in Jill's chances of recovery as they didn't see much improvement. The probability she would survive started to diminish as days passed. Even if she did wake up, she wouldn't be as healthy as she once was. Waking up every morning. Many people were affected by Jill's condition. Her parents had to struggle with the chance of them outliving their daughter. There still wasn't any chance in Jill's condition after 2 weeks, which meant that a decision needed to be made. Her parents. Ryan wasn't the only person who suffered from Jill's severe turn of events. Her parents needed to come to terms with the idea that she wasn't going to survive much longer. Jill's husband and her parents needed to decide after 2 weeks had passed without any sign of improvement. Ryan's journey. This was the hardest decision Ryan had ever had to make. He wrote down his thoughts in his journey that summed up how he was feeling. In his journal, he spoke about Jill being his soulmate and how he had to decide whether to keep her alive. If this happened, the pair had only entered their 30s and hadn't planned for any children. The ordeal that the couple was now faced with wasn't part of their plan. Nonetheless, the couple had spoken about life support, as Ryan's aunt was once on life support. The answer he needed. Ryan suddenly remembered that specific conversation and recalled that Jill stated she wouldn't want to live in such a manner. That was the answer he needed. He brought what he remembered to the family, and everyone agreed it was the best decision. Preparing for the end. Once the decision had been to take Jill off life support, the doctors informed Ryan of a medical term known as the last rally, which happens when a person gets taken off of life support. This patient could be making sounds and moving their body as it starts to shut down. The last rally. The doctors informed Ryan that Jill's entire upper torso would shift a little bit and mumbling would start. This was too much for him because he couldn't handle the thought of watching life slip out of his wife's body. The thought of this made him feel physically sick. Bracing for the worst. While the entire process was initially overwhelming, things began to change after a while. Jill hadn't been on life support for a few hours, but she was still not dead. Jill's mom called Ryan into the room to see what was happening. Going home. As soon as Ryan walked into the room, he noticed that his wife was muttering inconsistently throughout her last rally. However, she was now saying that she wanted to get out of the hospital and go home. After this, things began getting interesting. Answering all of his questions. Ryan was in utter disbelief. Was his wife really coming back to him? He began asking her questions about their life, and she was able to correctly answer all of them. Not only was she completely awake at this point, she was also functioning as usual. Nobody could believe it. It was something truly spectacular to see that Jill had beaten the odds. Ryan was thrilled beyond words to have his wife back. He stated that he couldn't ever feel as good as he did the moment he knew his wife was going to be okay. A puzzling moment. Ryan wasn't the only person who was shocked by his wife's extraordinary recovery. One of his doctors had previously told Ryan that his wife's chances of survival were no more than 1% after being present in a coma for several days. Jill's response. Jill has gone on to state her opinion on her husband taking her off life support. In most cases, the patient doesn't live long enough to comprehend what is happening. What this case was different. From Jill's response, she was in total agreement with his choice. On the day. After Jill had awoken from her coma, it was time to conduct the necessary tests to ensure that this event wouldn't happen again. It was discovered that she had a congenital condition which made her heart stop while she was sleeping. Unexplainable. The team of doctors didn't have an explanation for Jill's amazing recovery. However, measures were put in place to ensure that this event didn't happen again. A pacemaker was put in her heart to make sure it kept beating. Going back to herself. After she woke up from her coma, Jill went back to her normal self. However, this didn't happen automatically. She first needed to learn how to perform single tasks, like brushing her teeth and tying her shoe. Jill gained back the skills that she had lost while in a coma with the help of occupational and speech therapists. Newfound appreciation. Jill and Ryan identified a silver lining in the form of a newfound appreciation for each other's presence. There's no doubt that they loved each other before the incident, but they now know that they need to cherish every moment they spend with one another. Like newlyweds again. It's no secret that this couple has been through a lot. Even though they've faced hardships, they haven't lost their sense of humor. Since Jill came out of her coma, the couple has become like newlyweds all over again. A nomination. Ryan was more than happy to have Jill back in his life. He couldn't have asked for anything more. Nonetheless, the community wanted to ensure that he was given the recognition he deserved. They wanted to reward his loyalty and dedication. The recognition he deserves. The hospital where Jill spent her time nominated Ryan for the Oklahoma Heart Hero Award. This is a reward that's reserved for locals who have used CPR or an automated external defibrillator, AED, to save someone's life. Ryan was eligible because he performed CPR for his wife. Checking on his wife. The concern Ryan felt for his wife didn't end when the pair came home together. Since then, there isn't a night that Ryan doesn't wake up to check on her. He generally checks on his wife by kicking her. If she kicks back, he knows that she's all right. Life now. The couple has stated that this event could have easily changed their entire lives forever. They're grateful to have each other in their lives and in a way that remains usual. What happened with Jill was a medical miracle. Her medical miracle. Only good has come from Jill's medical emergency. In a scary situation, the couple has come back stronger and better than ever. The pair could have parted in an instant, or Jill could have shown brain damage that ultimately affected their relationship, but they rather found a greater appreciation for life and for each other.